Okay. Well, welcome everybody. It's great to see you as insofar as I can see you on Zoom. Um, I'm Martha Gray. I'm on the faculty at MIT, and I've been one of the faculty who've developed Catalyst, part of the group that developed it some 15 years ago, and we're still going strong. I'm joined today with several Catalyst faculty, fellows, staff, and they'll introduce themselves during the Q&A period at the end. Our goal is to tell you enough today about what Catalyst is, how we, who we are, how we work, and hopefully that'll help you decide if this is something you want to be a part of. So I'll start with some overview and where we're coming from and details of the 2026 program. But then I think the best part will be hearing from a few fellows who can talk about their experience, and then we'll open it up for questions. So feel free to type in questions as they come to mind in the chat, even if they repeat somebody else's question. You can wait to raise your hand during Q&A. Again, our real goal is to make sure you understand what we're about and help understand if this is the program for you. So we do start with an assumption, as that is that you're here because you're interested in, or at the very least curious about, bringing innovations to advance health, human health. So in our parlance, it means you care about having an impact. And that is a very good reason to consider Catalyst. Let's see if I can get it to advance. Here we go. Okay. So, what is Catalyst? Lots of ways to describe it. One, at its core, it's about expanding your mind map in order to drive that impact, and specifically in our case, to advance human health. Now, Catalyst isn't just a program. People describe it often as a way of thinking. So through some structured exploration, critical questioning, multidisciplinary collaboration, Catalyst will expand how innovators, or you, see the world. We challenge assumptions, surface hidden insights, reveal unseen connections, and, again, as I'll repeat many times, encourage you to think differently. Because fundamentally this is a way of thinking, and because that's such an important component of it, we start very early in the innovation process. And when I say early, I mean at the beginning, where you decide what to work on. Now, this mindset change isn't just intellectual, it's actually quite strategic, which is why we think it's so important. It'll enable you, or individuals and teams, to define or refine the problems, to imagine or reimagine solutions, and through that to unlock innovations that have the potential to be transformative in advancing human health. You'll leave Catalyst with a project, but almost more importantly, you'll leave transformed as individuals with a new mindset and a new sense of what you're capable of. So let me go back to my first point. The Catalyst serves to expand your mind map to drive impact. So I want to unpack what we mean by mind map. So we all actually operate from a mental framework that guides how we perceive, how we react to, how we engage with the world. And that framework is what I'm calling your mind map. And your mind map is shaped by the facts and domain knowledge you've acquired, say through school education, but also importantly and in significant ways by your experiences, your values, your judgments about how to use that knowledge. This is what provides the context for your decision making. So, for example, imagine you're a clinician walking into a patient encounter. You not only will use the medical facts, but you'll respond to that interaction based on your prior experiences. What was it like the last time you saw the patient? What about the disease they have or the problem they have? What about the institution you're part of? All of your interaction will be guided by that past experience, which is to say, by your mind map. So similarly, your mind map will govern your own decision making and your reactions in the context of your efforts at innovation. So one way people can look at this, a different way, a different terminology, is to say your mind map encompasses your worldview. And you can undoubtedly appreciate that the broader your mind map, the broader and clearer your worldview. And that part's kind of easy. Look at it, but what's easy to forget with that context, and which people will tell you I've often forgotten and still do, is that you can't see anything outside of your mind map. Not only can you not see it, you don't even know you're missing it. So this is maybe best understood through a story. And so let me tell you a story of Emily, who's actually my daughter. At the age of 15, we learn, it's probably a better way to say it, we learn that she is 6 months pregnant. Okay, she's 15. Now, you might imagine that our reaction, my husband and mine, was like on the left-hand side here. Oh my gosh, does she have any idea what she's in for? This is a life-changing event, which it is, what's going to happen? Emily, on the other hand, was, yay, this is the best thing that could have happened. I love kids. This is what I've been dreaming of all along. So, the story we can tell you about another time, but I think this is something that's easy to relate to, that a teenager's worldview is narrower and different from an adult's. Right, so hopefully you're nodding and you get this story, but the same principle applies in other contexts. There are undoubtedly areas where your knowledge is limited and where you're as unaware of those blind spots as Emily was, or as teenagers are to adulthood. And everybody has them. These are blind spots that we see in virtually every person, but including early stage innovators and researchers. So innovators often overlook the complexity of user needs, of their preferences, of the environment in which they make decisions. Ideas are frequently developed without a clear sense of how they fit in the broader healthcare system, in the market, or the research landscape. It's very easy to underestimate resistance, the pushback from stakeholders who may lose influence or lose revenue or control. Regulatory, financial, and institutional obstacles are regularly underestimated or really discovered too late. And perhaps the largest of all that encompasses it is the issue of hidden assumptions, these foundational beliefs about the problem, how it manifests itself, how it originates, the solution, or the path to impact are not revealed or examined. So one of the most effective ways to avoid these blind spots is to work with people who are not like you, which is to say people with different backgrounds, experiences, and types of expertise. They'll ask you questions that you haven't thought of. They'll spot gaps in your logic. They'll offer a different worldview, and if you join Catalyst, you'll find they frustrate you. But this kind of collaboration is one of the most powerful ways to expand your mind map, and actually, ultimately, it truly expands your potential to have impact. So that's it for the overview. Let me just now turn to how we deliver on what I've just said and tell you specifically about the program. So in Catalyst, you do work with a cohort of fellows and faculty who are not like you. Collectively, they're a group with strengths, experiences, and mind maps that are different than yours. Operationally, it's structured in 2 phases, followed by a transition to the real-world implementation. So phase 1, which runs from January to July, you enter as a cohort of fellows, as individuals, and you work collaboratively to explore unmet needs in healthcare, develop a portfolio of strong, evidence-based or evidence-informed project proposals. In phase 2, you continue as part of a team, but now based on the project. You grow your team as you need it to generate, and you begin to generate evidence that you need to convince future funders, partners, or adopters. This is the execution phase. Often people have much more experience with this phase than any other part in advance. And then post-Catalyst, teams typically transition out of the program to continue their work, often through a startup or a licensing deal, through academic medicine, or another pathway that leads to real-world healthcare impact. So to take a look at how phase one happens, since that's what is most immediate and happens between January and July, you'll join a multidisciplinary cohort of fellows. Now you don't begin with a project. You begin with a blank slate, your current mind map, and a shared goal. That shared goal is to discover and define unmet medical needs, unmet needs in healthcare that are truly worth solving. You'll conduct immersion and observation and investigation to uncover challenges that are grounded in real-world clinical context or system context. You'll engage in critical questioning, stakeholder discovery, to figure out who's affected, what the constraints are, where the opportunities are, and you'll devise and explore solutions possibilities. In early rough forms, figure out how to test these ideas and how you might intervene to make a difference. And these will be repetitively evaluated for evidence, feasibility, and the potential to have the impact. So it's laid out in this slide as if it's a very linear process. I know the fellows will tell you that in reality it is very nonlinear. They use the word chaotic. We say nonlinear and iterative because it really moves back and forth between understanding the problems and testing the potential directions for solutions. These have to really hang together in all cases to make it deliver the value. Throughout this, you're guided by a structured curriculum and supported by feedback from a group of experienced mentors. They come from our faculty mentors. They include a group of clinicians, entrepreneurs, researchers, business people from large businesses, and so forth, and they'll help you sharpen your thinking. But I should say these projects are really about you. We're mentoring, we're not owning these projects. And by the end of phase one, you'll have a portfolio of projects that are informed by your inquiry and grounded in the need and the possibility to have that impact. We don't do phase one as an exercise. It's really to get us to phase two. And this is where you would take a lead role in actually executing the projects. Should pause now to say there's not a requirement that you carry on to phase two. That's a decision you can make later, depending on your situation and your career objectives and your affinity to this way of thinking. But the main point that I want you to come away with is that this is intended to be a mentored version of real life. This is not a class that simply ends in June and you go and walk away. Trust me that that perspective that you're going to continue and you're going to own this, really, it both raises the stakes and vastly improves the opportunity for you to get somewhere. So phase two actually happens in a project-specific way rather than cohort on cohort. So we transition from this full cohort to having bi-weekly project meetings. Again, it's an iterative process. Some things have to be rediscovered or figured out and so forth, as these kinds of things always are. Initially, we do find teams generally need to expand to recruit experts or students so that you can have the people power to advance your work. And the execution strategy is really about de-risking, eliminating and mitigating the threats to its success, demonstrating that different things work so that you can get up the value chain, as they say. The timing to transition to independence is really very project dependent, but it's often quite clear when that time is right. So we say it's a number of years. It has varied enormously, but you do know when it's time to transition out to independence. Okay. At the end of it all, this process really does work. Most Catalyst projects exit with a clear plan, a clear path, I should say, to healthcare impact. And it's supported again by evidence that is sufficient to attract funders and partners and institutional backing. But again, I want to say Catalyst is about more than just the projects, it's about the people behind them. Fellows are transformed, they gain a deeper understanding of their strengths, a renewed perspective on their goals, and confidence to lead in complex, uncertain environments. So I just want you to walk away understanding that this is both a professional development, career development process that's steeped in real world considerations because we try to do real projects that have real impact. Okay. So there's a lot more I could say. Everybody who knows me already knows I can go on, but I won't because I want to first share a few key details about 2026 and then jump into the conversation so that you can hear from the people who are living this. Okay, so 2026. This is a partnership of MIT and the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. And specifically within MIT, Catalyst is hosted by MIT's Institute for Medical Engineering and Science under the auspices of MIT Link that you see on the logo. And what that means to you is that many of the resources at MIT can be leveraged by fellows in the program, even if you're not at MIT, don't have an appointment at MIT. At the VA, we're hosted by the VHA Innovation Ecosystem, and fellows can also leverage VA resources whether or not you happen to be appointed at the VA. I also want to make clear you don't have to be part of the MIT or the VA to apply. We accept applications from applicants who reside in the US. If you reside in Europe, we do have a sister program called Catalyst Europe that's also soliciting applications for their 2026 program. If you have questions on that, just reach out to us and we can guide you. We do try to stick within some reasonable spread of time zones, and so that people can effectively work together. So in terms of logistics, much of this program is remote, and that allows us to accommodate people from across the country. We have sessions every Wednesday from 10 to 1, and we set aside Monday from 10 to 11 for group discussions. We found that to be very useful to allow fellows to interact with each other without having to find a different way to schedule it. There are 3 times that we get together for an extended period of time in person. We call them intensifications, and I think if you experience it, you'll know why it has that name. And the dates there are all on the website, but here they are. This is a super important part of the program, part of your ability to work together as a cohort and to work with faculty during that time. In terms of workload, we ask that you devote at least 10 to, count on being able to devote 10 to 15 hours a week. And that includes the scheduled times that I just listed. But there's ad hoc times where you want to meet with faculty, independent work time, ad hoc time that you want to work with one another. The initial commitment is 6 months to get through phase 1, but that's sort of essential. But we ask you to go into it expecting to spend a year, so that you can plan your life accordingly and can go on to phase 2, should that be something you want to do when you get to that mark. So in terms of what it costs you, we've been very fortunate in being able to raise money and get money from our partners to help support this effort. We'd like to make it open to people without the need to pay. We do, however, ask that you support travel. If you're from the VA, very often they have found a way to support that travel. That's still a work in progress for 2026, so I just want to be transparent about that now. And if this is a barrier to your participation, please don't let it be. Please reach out to us and let us know. And then last but not least, again, this information is in the on the website, but just to say we're a few weeks away from when we'd like you to submit your application. Our interviews are held in early September. We'll let you know at the end of August whether you're on the interview list, and then we'll announce it roughly a month later. And you'll enroll in the fall with a start date again of January, I've forgotten, 3rd or 4th or something like that, first week of January. And with that, I want to turn it over to our reflections by, actually, they're all current fellows that have completed phase 1. Some are several years into phase 2. At least one of you is just entering phase 2. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Ga to introduce and moderate the conversation from here. And I will stop sharing.
Thanks, Martha. Hello, everyone. My name is Ga. My voice is breaking. I will be moderating this fellow Q&A session. So I will first introduce myself and then ask that others introduce themselves. And then I will start with some prepared questions, but I will also be keeping an eye out on the chat box to make sure that we also get to your questions as well. So I'll get started in this format of name, catalyst year, titles and backgrounds, and any projects that you're working on right now. And then I guess I would prefer to go in the order that we see in the screen, and just to be consistent and easy for us. So on the screen, I see me, Laura, Adi, Pranay, and Michelle in that order. So I'll get started and pass it on to Laura after. So hello, my name is Ga. I'm a 5th-year MD-PhD student at Harvard and MIT currently. I am in my 2nd year of the Catalyst, so we finished phase 1 and we just got started with phase 2, going into the 2nd year of phase 2, I think. I have a background in chemistry, currently doing my PhD in chemistry. And the project I'm working on currently is an opioid overdose detection platform utilizing respiratory markers and respiratory devices. And that project I'm currently on with Adi and Michelle as well, and I'll let them also speak for themselves. So I'm popcorning to Laura now.
Thank you, Ga. My name is Laura Bezier. I'm a staff psychiatrist at James Sally VA in Tampa, Florida. Current clinical and research focuses on TBI and PTSD in the special operations population. In past lives, career-wise, was a naval aviator and a DoD engineer. And I'm currently the mom of a 7-year-old. Just to let you know that it is possible to do that as a parent. So current project, the team is from the 2023 cohort, and we're looking to leverage wearable data from devices like the Oura Ring and advanced data flows and AI to improve treatment of sleep in the PTSD population. And I'll pass it on to Adi.
Hey, thanks, Laura. So Adi Chandrasekhar, I am from the same cohort as Ga. So we were together 2 years ago. So not the most recent cohort, but the one before that. Titles and backgrounds, I have a couple of different titles, but I think basically a physician, an internal medicine physician. My background is in primary care with a strong focus on HIV and STD related work. I've been in public health pretty much my entire clinical career, so I would say straddling that boundary between clinical and public health. In terms of Catalyst, I'm on this same project that Ga mentioned earlier, which is the opioid overdose detection related project. And so we are about a year into phase 2 at this point. And to second what Laura said, definitely can do it with a young kid. I have a 3-year-old who was a 2-year-old when I was doing this, who probably might literally jump into the screen at some point, and I apologize in advance if she does, but definitely doable. So I will pass it to Pranay.
Thanks, Adi. Hello, everyone. My name is Pranay Banerjee. I'm actually from the 2025 Catalyst cohort. So, and yeah, one of my projects was just approved for phase 2 earlier this week. And I'm an electrical engineer by profession. I work for a company called Cummins. Maybe some of you have heard about it. We work on making design engines for, the next generation vehicles. So I'm probably one of the people with the most non-medical, non-clinical background that you'll see here. So trust me, this is something that any of you who has a deep sense of curiosity can participate in. The project that I mentioned earlier that has been approved for phase 2 is related to finding a solution for peritoneal dialysis, a problem with patients with end-stage renal disease. And yep, that's pretty much it. Yep, I've lived through this, and yeah, I can tell you this is a life-changing experience. So yep, open to any questions at the end. Thank you.
Congratulations, Pranay. That's very exciting. And welcome to the phase 2 family. So my name is Michelle Petrovic. I am an anesthesiologist at the Orlando VA, where I have proudly served since 2012. I'm from the 2024 cohort, and I'm on the project in phase 2 that Ga and Adi mentioned already on opioid. And I'm also on a project on traumatic brain injury, where we're looking at biomarkers and some AI related clinical decision support tools. So 2 sort of very different things, both quite relevant to the veteran population, which is really important to me in my professional growth. And I also know the academic sector, I know the private sector, I've worked in both. So I understand that our audience, probably there's folks from outside the VA, and we can all speak to that as well as within the VA.
Thank you so much. So I'll get started with some of the questions. Actually, it feels weird for the moderator to answer the question first. So I will actually ask that Laura go, and then I'll answer after Michelle. The first question is, how did you hear about Catalyst, and what made you apply to the program?
Just to make sure, you wanted me to answer that?
Yeah. So I'll go to the train of Laura, Audie, Pranay, Michelle, and I'll just go at the end.
Okay. In my case, it was a random email, and it came at a point where I was kind of looking for something a little bit beyond what I was doing. For me, the worst possible patient conversation is to be sitting across from somebody and just say, we've done all the things in the textbook, we're out of runway, you're gonna have to suck it up and live with whatever this is, and we're not working on anything new. Like I despise having that conversation. So a means to push forward and to not ever have to say we're not working on something new. It's been a real privilege. So I'll pass to Adi.
I first heard about the Catalyst existence, let's just call it, because I was outreached by a former or current Catalyst fellow, I think they're still in phase 2, who had reached out to me as a part of their discovery as a subject matter expert in something they were working on, and that's when I first heard of it. I was very curious about it as soon as I heard of it. I don't think at that point, this was in the early years of the pandemic, and I was not in a space where I could possibly consider one more thing. But I think I had it in the back of my mind. So I think a year or two later, when I felt like I had more time and bandwidth to look into it, is how I applied to it. And I'll pass it over to Pranay.
Sure. In my case, I'm a bit obsessed with MIT. So I have subscribed to all the newsletters and all the websites, related to MIT. And through that, I actually came to know about the Catalyst program. And that piqued my interest because even though it was a different field, some of the approaches and, past information session videos, etc., when I looked through it, it seemed like, there are skills that can be transferable even for someone with a non-medical, non-clinical background. And yeah, that's how I came to know about the Catalyst program. And I pass it to Michelle.
So Pranay, I actually ended up buying the t-shirt. It says MIT here. So the obsession, you either start with the obsession or you acquire it. So I totally understand that. So like Laura, I had a random, I think an email that was somewhat randomly sent to me and landed in my inbox. And perhaps like a lot of you out there, I get hundreds of emails a day. And it was at the end of the day. And I still don't know what caused me to actually click on it because the header was rather nondescript. And I was having a bad day that day. And I scrolled through it and it immediately caught my attention. And I'm like, wow, this sounds like an amazing program. This is just what I need right now in my career and to kind of invigorate me in what I'm doing. Because I'm mid-career, and when one gets to mid-career, you kind of start to decide what you want to do. And in some cases, maybe feeling that you're stagnating. So it was really fortuitous that I got that email, but I could have easily overlooked it. I'm the first one to be an MIT Catalyst Fellow from Orlando. And so there wasn't anyone ahead of me to sort of ask questions or to try to socialize it more. But I'm so glad that I read that email.
I guess for me, I am more early career at this stage. I'm currently still in training. But actually for one of I tell this story so many times. There was a session in our early first couple years in medical school where Martha came in and gave a quick, basically 1-day boot camp of phase 1 with the medical students. And I was hooked from that day on. I reached out to Martha immediately. And she suggested that I look into Catalyst. And it kind of aligned with my goals a lot because I was thinking a lot about academic papers and how a lot of those don't actually end up in real world as translated products and patient facing products. And I think this fellowship helped me answer a lot of questions about what makes a good paper versus what makes a real impact. So yeah, I will move on to the second question now, which is looking back, what is one thing you think you took away from Catalyst or learned from Catalyst? So we'll start with Laura again.
I think just to always take a beginner's mindset as much as possible to everything and question assumptions, and realize there are backdoor ways to get a lot of things done, even if they're not readily apparent.
Audie.
Yeah, I think Laura stole exactly what I was about to say, which is question assumptions, right? I think that was probably the biggest thing I took away from it, and I still use it so often and in so many aspects of the work we all do that there are things I think we're all just used to doing. I speak as a clinician, but it's probably true for everyone, but particularly for clinicians, we are creatures of habit. We do things over and over again, and at some point it's just muscle memory and you're just doing it. And we forget that curiosity that, wait, why am I doing this? Is there another way to do this? Is there a different way or what are the downsides of the approach that I'm currently taking? That's not something I think we pause to think about. And Catalyst really helped me sort of get back and recalibrate on that.
Yep, I'll take it further, what you said, Adi. I think many of us have heard that statement, a problem well defined is a problem half solved, right? So believe me, that is my biggest takeaway out of the Catalyst phase 1, because we delve into I would say the subatomic levels of what can be in a problem, and questioning assumptions. Why do we do something the way we do it? As an engineer, when I see a problem, I always want to go to the solution, but just focusing on the how. Maybe it's time to focus on the why. And that's pretty much a very significant portion of the phase 1 program that we just concluded. We spent a lot of time understanding the problem definition. What is a problem? What is you start with a hunch, right? But you have to go to the very basic fundamental levels so that even if somebody calls you at 3 a.m., you can tell them, yes, this is exactly why this is a problem. So yeah, that's my biggest takeaway.
It's really hard to pick just one. Being a Catalyst Fellow has just supercharged my career and caused a lot of self-discovery of strengths I didn't realize that I had. They were within me, but I didn't realize that they were there. So if I had to choose one of them, I'd have to say it's the power of iteration. So I had a general sense of that going into this, but the power of iteration allows you to fail and not be afraid of failing, because in failing, you're learning and you're getting better and your project is getting better. And I've brought that into so many aspects of my professional and my personal life. And it's so empowering. When you look at life through an iterative lens, it's really been life altering for me.
I think I echo what everyone else really said. I guess to kind of reiterate what's already been said, I think I learned to really dissect a problem from the very beginning parts of it. And realizing that I had a lot of assumptions about how things are and why we do things that I didn't really realize. And I think this kind of skill set of being able to think about a problem, think about a potential solution, and even go back and go like, is this even really a problem? And really investigating that thoroughly helped not only in a Catalyst sense, but also in just my current research endeavors as well. Last question that is pre-planned, and then I will move on to some of the questions that are popping up in the chat as well. What has been your one favorite memory from Catalyst, both phase 1 and phase 2? Anything?
I think for me, during one of the intensifications, a conversation with the guy who eventually became my partner in crime on the team about his musical tastes and pursuits that have nothing to do with the project, but just convinced me that he was the absolute right guy to work with. Just his approach and creativity and wild sense of humor. Also realized that this was a couple of years back, and at lunch, I think the same intensification, another guy said, "Hey, you should really check out this ChatGPT thing that just came out," which now seems, hilariously primitive to have that conversation, but sticks in my mind.
I think so many wonderful memories, but I feel like the best memories I always have are of like the on-site intensifications when we all are together. This happens in phase 1, although a little bit in phase 2 as well. And I really think there was a certain camaraderie of like the cohort, which was a lot of fun, both in terms of things we were doing in the day, sort of as we did our Catalyst stuff, but also a lot of socializing outside of that. And I think over the course of those 6 months, I was pretty amazed at how well I got to know so many of my peers in a manner that perhaps I know people from my medical school or people that I've spent a lot more time with before becoming that comfortable around.
Yep. In my case, also the favorite memories are from the intensification days. So a little bit about myself. I'm a food enthusiast, right? So whenever I'm eating lunch or dinner, it's like sacred time for me. So during intensification, those were working lunches. And, we would discuss, oh, this is the problem. This is what we found. And while eating a sandwich, I literally, spit it out because I found that one of the ideas we were considering was already thought of by a different company. So that, level of involvement, the camaraderie, and the fact that within a few months I was so involved with this, and this meant something to me, was in some ways a scary as well as a happy memory. But yeah, it's those intensification sessions where you get to meet and also understand that you don't have to be from the same background to have a good team dynamics and all working cohesively on a project. So yeah, those are my favorite memories.
So if I had to categorize the memories, I'd put it into 2 buckets. One is the notion of instant family. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but it's a movie about someone who acquires a whole group of foster children and who didn't previously have children. And for me, this was like as Audie had said, the intensifications, everything, we just accelerated our getting to know each other so quickly that it felt a lot in a very positive way, like an instant family. Now, do families fight? Yes. Do they argue? Yes. But, you know, we all in the end love each other. And the second thing is mentorship. So that's a big thing for me. And I delightfully have had the opportunity to mentor, most specifically with the PKG scholars who are the undergraduates at MIT who joined the program initially in phase one and in some cases beyond. And then even with some of my co-peer fellows who are younger than me and at different stages of their lives, especially the female fellows, it's been really rewarding to share with them my own journey professionally and the challenges that I've faced, and in hopes that they don't have to face those same challenges.
You know, at the risk of going out of turn and perhaps embarrassing Michelle a little, like I still keep the card she gave me right behind my desk all time when I'm sitting. So
That's
I
so
didn't know
cute.
that. That's so nice.
Audie. On that note, one of my favorite memories was actually the dinner that we had at Audie's house at one of the sprints or intensifications. And I just remember I got his dog's furs all over my my clothing. But it was a really sweet memory and kind of exemplified what Michelle was talking about how close-knit the fellows got in our cohort. Okay, so I think I will open up. I saw that there were a lot of questions in the chat that were tackled by Melissa fearlessly. Thank you, Melissa. But I noticed that there were some questions that were easier to address orally. If people would like to raise your hands, you can as well. I will kind of go through the chats one by one right now. I think the first one that came up was the difference between some of the other Kendall MIT programs, such as the Engine, Flagship, HEALS, etc. And I think I will let Martha tackle this one actually.
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of opportunities in most, big areas in that use the term innovation, and sometimes we think about whether we should use that. But let me tell you about some of the differences, and these are probably not terms that are familiar to everybody here. So I think earlier there was a question about I-Corps. So we actually have an I-Corps hub, and many of our fellows have taken advantage of the I-Corps program, usually is in their early phase 2 time. I-Corps is a NSF-sponsored program where you usually bring a project idea and you have to have certain people associated with it. And what they do is teach you how to go out and do customer discovery around that idea. But you come with something. And so one of the big differences is, like, we would like you to validate we absolutely want you to go talk to people, and there's a huge value in it, but we start at a different place, and perhaps as a consequence, it's become useful. And I-Corps people have participated in being mentors for our fellows. And that is just an experience that's time limited. There's different phases of it you can go through, or different depths, but they have a very structured process for doing those interviews. The Engine is a tough tech accelerator. So you absolutely have to have an innovation, and should we have something that needs to be commercialized, that where that the Engine is certainly, I don't think we've had any projects be supported through the Engine process, though they have participated and been supported through some of their commercialization programs. Let's see, HEALS is a new initiative at MIT. By virtue of us being at MIT, we're sort of connected automatically. where our host is a core part of the HEALS initiative, which is MIT's initiative to try to do more in the health space. So that's a potential source of funding that could support these projects when you get to phase 2. It's not a promise, and there's, as with many institutions, there's we are very entrepreneurial in how we try to get resources to support the projects that come through. We don't have anything from HEALS yet because they just started very recently, but we have had them from other sources at MIT that support these kinds of activities. And there's also an entrepreneurship center, the Trust Center, that has programs. So we encourage people to take advantage of all the resources they can get their hands on, so long as they're advancing your goals. And we will absolutely help you find them and use them. I don't remember who asked the question. It's no longer on my screen, but did I answer, and I did it from memory, the things you asked, the things you asked me to compare it to.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
The second question that I saw on the screen that wasn't answered yet, I think it's for the fellows, is what was your average day-to-day like as a fellow? I'm assuming they're talking about phase one as we're starting out. And the second part of the question said, what kinds of jobs would you be aspiring to get afterwards? I guess this might apply to someone like me who's a more early career, but I guess for those who are more established in their career trajectories, I guess you can talk about how you hope Catalyst will help enhance your current career trajectories or supplement it. I'll let anyone, if they want to, jump in.
Yeah, I can take an initial stab at this. So as I said, I'm mid-career and was really looking for something to super boost my career and my reinvigorate me just with my enthusiasm. And I previously mentioned that I've learned things about myself through this program. And one of the things that I've learned is I'm really good at strategic planning. Like that was not even on my awareness level, but it's something that came up during sort of an analysis that they do through at one particular place in the program. And today and tomorrow, I've been in full days of strategic planning for the Orlando VA healthcare system. So part of that, I should say, in addition to being an anesthesiologist, I'm director and chief of medical simulation for the Orlando VA. So there's a reason that I'm there. But my ability to strategically plan has just went from like me not realizing it to like exponential growth. And that's been really, really exciting for me.
And as far as managing clinical days, what I ended up doing was shifting most of my known obligations to a couple days a week, which my colleagues have come to describe as clinical Armageddon. But by stacking everything on those 2 days, I have a little bit more leeway to do the formal and the unexpected stuff that comes up. And there was no formal FTE cut because we were the first cohort to come through at Tampa, but it was doable. Like if you're motivated to do it, you'll find a way.
Yeah, I think in terms of how our day-to-day sort of activities were, especially in phase one, I did not have protected time as such to do this. So this was sort of over and above whatever day jobs I had. And I would say that, we did a lot of stuff that would be in business hours, but also sometimes stuff outside of business hours, like late evening calls were pretty common to get presentations done. And in terms of how it impacts job, career, for personally, I think I was sort of drifting a little bit from the world of clinical into the world of health tech and digital health. And I think it solidified that journey in some ways. It's not that it's changed my job at this point in any way, but I do think it has changed the trajectory of where my job is going, if you will.
Yep, I will echo what Adi said. I think since I'm non-VA, so the hours I spent working on the Catalyst projects or even taking part in these intensification were outside of my work hours. But initially, to be honest, I was a bit intimidated because of me not having a clinical background. But then I was surprised at how quickly you learn, especially once you have gone through that experience of the first on-site, intensification. It will feel overwhelming, but trust me, you'll get used to it, and then you'll be surprised at how quickly and how efficiently you can get things done. And the way of thinking and strategic planning, as Michelle said, those are some of the things that you will take away to your day job. And I have seen that firsthand as well. As I said, like very non-medical day job for me, but even some of the things that we were learning on how to break down a problem to its fundamental pieces, and then from there, thinking of what a proposal or solution or a concept could be, and then thinking of the 50 different things that can go wrong, and then coming up with a plan on how to address them specifically. Those are things that are transferable to any industry, not just the healthcare industry. So, yeah.
Yeah, I can very quickly answer as well. During phase one, I guess Martha already kind of gave an overview of what phase one really looks like, but it was, lots of Zoom meetings with people. But also during the intensifications, you all gather in person and you do a lot of huddles together. You do a lot of brainstorming together, a lot of thinking and a lot of charting and a lot of drawing and idea mapping. And I guess for me, actually, Catalyst really changed my views on how innovation works and like how it applies to academic research and stuff. So okay, this actually changed my plans entirely, and I genuinely don't know what I will be doing in the future, but that is a later problem after I finish my training. I guess we are almost at time, but I didn't see anyone also raise their hands. I think if you have any lingering questions, now is a good time to squeeze them in. So feel free to just unmute or raise your hand.
Hi there. My name is Mariah. I have a question about your experience as fellows, and it seems like you're still able to, in parallel, work in your current day job. But is anyone here on the call today interested in creating a startup as a result of this experience, or what are your kind of ultimate plans as you go into phase two?
I can lead that one if you want. I mean, the answer would be yes. I think our projects are perhaps too early to have this discussion. We're only a year out, and these projects can have a pretty variable timeline. There are projects that did indeed evolve into companies. Personally, sure, I would be very open to that, but I also like the fact that I came into Catalyst not necessarily hoping for that to be the outcome as much as that would be a good outcome too. I think for me, it was more learning the methodology of how people can innovate and trying to work with teams that can make that happen. And if in the process it leads to a startup or a company, I would be very happy with that. But that was just my perspective. I'm curious about how others feel about that.
While they're thinking, I would just say we have had many, and I just, for a different reason, have been in touch with a wide variety of the phase two teams. And we asked a version of that question about getting their stuff out. So I'd say even many people who don't come in saying they want it, often want to see it, either as they themselves become part of a startup, and we definitely have fellows make that transition, but also that they lay the groundwork for somebody else to take it out. And both of those are really important and valid ways to approach it. But we explicitly don't say the goal of this program is to start a company. Our goal is to have impact, and there are just lots of ways that can happen. I'll stop. It looks like Melissa has her hand up.
Yes, I just want to thank, this question is posted twice, so I want to make sure that we get to it. What are the differences between the Catalyst Europe program and the US one, other than the residency requirements? Do they have common sessions at some point? Are there common interactions across two programs?
So I think I can take that one. They are definitely close cousins of one another. There are some interactions between the two programs, but not in the sense that you share sessions. We have had U.S. faculty participate as to give advice, or U.S. Fellows as well as faculty give advice to the Catalyst Europe. Catalyst Europe right now is newer and smaller in terms of the depth of their faculty. So we do engage and we share curricular material and experience like that. And we've even had fellows from the US think about joining phase 2 from Europe because people have moved to Europe. So the networks are definitely overlapping. I also want a number of questions related to what kind of people we accept, and I think it's been answered in the chat, but in case somebody's not reading it, that it's unusual that, we just put out a call, who's available at this time? And, so in this case, we have 4 of the 5 are practicing or soon to be potentially practicing physicians. That the distribution of backgrounds is large, is not, what if it 80% clinicians. Clinicians are super valuable, but so are the engineers, and we've had business people. I don't know if we've had one person who I think would call herself a designer that's been in the program, and we've had people across a range of career stages, and I think that message has come across. So if the key question is this something that interests you and you have the time and energy to put into it, and happy to talk, me or other people would be happy to talk to you more specifically about your situation. And somebody also asked, who comes up with the problems? Everybody. It actually doesn't work to say, you clinicians tell us the problem and you engineer, you solve it. I think the fellows will agree. Not everybody has a lot to say about that process in our experience.
Yeah, I want to just tag on to something you were saying there. So at the very start of phase 1, Melissa usually sends out an email that says, come up with, suggestions for what you think you'd like to look into. And I don't recall exactly, but I think I had around 13 ideas or hunches. And most of those, if I recall correctly, were anesthesia related, because that's what I clinically practice. And at the end of the day, I didn't do any projects that involved anesthesia. And the reason I say that is because you really want to come to this program to get the most out of it. You want to come to this program with a completely open mind. So I had never worked with really engineers before in my life. I worked with a lot of scientists, but not, engineers. And to me, that was just like awe-inspiring. The logic that they used to think through things was so interesting and unique and valuable. And for me, the multidisciplinary and interprofessional nature of it is what really attracted me to this program to start with. So whether I ended up with a successful startup or with a project, that was directly clinically related to what I pursue in my day job, really became a moot point, right? Because I allowed myself to be taken with the flow of the ebb and flow of what was happening with the teams and with the projects themselves. So I can't overemphasize the importance of that.
If I could just jump off what Michelle just said, I would take it a step further. So when I was looking into applying for the project, for the fellowship, one of the pieces of advice I had received from a former fellow was to actually try your best to not get involved in something that you actually have a lot of expertise in. Like, do not try to jump into something that you feel like you are the expert on or that you practice on a very daily basis, because you come in with a lot more blind spots, and that process of learning happens much better when you are in a team where I was on I'm a clinician, but I was on teams that were far enough removed sometimes from the direct clinical work that I was doing that I could ask questions in a manner that I think was helpful for the team. Not to say that you shouldn't work in spaces eventually that you obviously have expertise in. That's always a good thing, but I feel from a learning standpoint, the learning was much better an experience for me being embedded into teams where I was not in a space where I was like, I can tell you everything about this, because that would be a wrong approach to sort of how Catalyst wants you to innovate. It works much better if you come in with a cleaner slate, let's just call it.
I'll piggyback off of that and actually share a story, I guess, a anecdote of what happened in some of our phase 1 days. I remember when we first started brainstorming hunches, there were sticky notes that were covering the walls of rooms from ends to ends, and we had to go all around the room and like read everything, and it just took a very long time. There were so many words, so many hunches, and actually some of the best hunches that I was really inspired by to look into were from some of the undergraduate students as well. So not only is there very an interdisciplinary crossover, there's an intergenerational crossover of young students to very experienced physicians or experienced engineers. And I think the crosstalk between very new ideas that you really didn't think about or questions that you absolutely could not have thought of coming from younger students, those were all invaluable experiences within Catalyst. Any other questions? Feel free to jump in. If not, I guess I'll let Melissa or Martha take over.
Well, thank you for joining us. If questions come to mind, no matter how silly you think it might be, please reach out to Melissa, or is the easiest contact, which I think is on the website, or any of us. And if we're not the right people to ask, we'll put you in touch. I think I saw somebody, I think Laura, you said if you think it's interesting and you're nervous about applying, apply anyways. We have had many people say, "Oh, I'm so glad. I wasn't sure I could do this at all," and because we're so used to following educational paths where the thing that gets you there is such a trodden path. This is really, are you interested in and willing to invest time and energy to do it? And we benefit from a mix, as the fellows were just saying. Great to see you all and the interest, and hope to see your application and then see you in the interviews.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.